We're very happy to be with you on the event today. Of course, we would have loved to be there in person, but that's the beauty of Zoom. We can join from anywhere, anytime. And good thing is, we're both Arabic speakers. If you'd like for us to also conduct conversations in Arabic, we would be more than happy to do that because we actually miss speaking in Arabic and presenting in Arabic. And let me introduce both of us. I'm Fredriek Khoury. With us as well is Omar Fathallah, and we're both sales engineers with Snowflake. We love this mix of technical conversations, business conversations, seeing what we can do with the data and so on. And we have prepared for you today a demo on what Snowflake can do. And this is a high level thing. We're going to show you a few things that you can do, and it goes way beyond this. So I'll leave the mic with Omar so he can also introduce himself, and we'll kick it from there. We're both with you today on this demo.
So again, my name is Omar. I am the partner pre-sales engineer. I work closely with our partners in the region to help them get enabled on everything Snowflake. I'm very happy to also participate in this event to present and demonstrate what we do with Snowflake. I'm assuming you've already had a bit of an introduction to what Snowflake is. So without further ado, we'll jump into the demo to give you a good idea of how we do what we do. So this is the main GUI to begin with. I'll start off with the left column to highlight the different functions and features that we have available to you. First off, we have who you're logged in is. So as you can imagine, we can switch security roles depending on what you want to do. We can get very granular in terms of the role and capabilities and the permissions that you have available to you. We'll get into some details of that later on. We have a worksheet section, and here you see I have a bunch of worksheets, and this is kind of where we run our commands and our queries, mostly in SQL, but if you prefer Python or Java or Scala, that's all possible in terms of connecting with the platform itself. We're going to be focusing on the SQL method. A little bit more about, again, what's available to you before we get into operating, let's say, the queries and the warehouses. So we do have a dashboard section. It's empty for now, but basically you can save views. You can save your queries as views, and you can view them as dashboards or databases, set up private sharing. I'm going to go ahead right now and actually create a database while I'm at it. So just to show you how easy it is, a lot of things can be done via the GUI. Some things can be done via script. In this case, I'm going to be showing you both examples essentially. So in this case, I just created a a database called Citabyte1, and you'll see that we'll have the full structure available to us to play around with, to view, to reorganize as you see fit. So you've got there's no tables at this point. This is where you see your views, any stages for the import of information. We'll see an example of that. All of that is going to be here.
The beauty of this,
next we have a section. Yes, please go ahead.
The beauty of this, by the way, everyone, when you want to work with Snowflake, you basically log into the Snowstat, and it's software as a service. So you sign up for Snowflake, you get access to this right away. So what Omar is showing you, this is what you get right away, right after signing. You open Snowflake, app.snowflake.com, you have access to your worksheets, you have access to the data part. Everything Omar is going to show you now is what you do right away.
Exactly. And everything I'm showing you, you can actually sign up for a trial. If you go to snowflake.com/trial, you get a 30-day trial, so you can actually play around yourself. So next we have a marketplace. This is a big aspect of what we do for our customers, of what makes up the data cloud, and that's the data sharing aspect. Whether you want to ingest data and or subscribe to data sets that others have made available, we'll see also an example of this throughout the demo, or whether you want to share your own data, make it available to others, whether they're Snowflake customers or not, that's all possible. Next, we have the activity section. So we'll get to also play around with this, but you get to see all previous queries. So every action that you do within the system is audited. So you have full knowledge of who's done what with what. And again, we'll see examples, and we can delve deeper into the performance of the query to kind of dig around and see if there's anything that can be improved. So we'll also look at examples of that. Last, we have the admin tab, and this is where we get to see the usage. So if you want to look at billing, if you want to see how much the warehouses or the platform itself has been utilized, we can set up resource monitors. So if you want to set up quotas in terms of usage or take actions when a certain percentage of the quota has been taken, you can manage that from here, from the resource monitors. Users and roles, as you can imagine, to manage the roles and everything, and get granular with the permissions and all of that. So with that, let's jump into the actual activity of why we're here, why we want to use, or how we can utilize the platform itself. So you'll see I have a bunch of suspended warehouses. When a warehouse is not running, you're not being charged anything. And this is a big concept in terms of the pay as you go, or pay as you consume, if you will, concept. So I'm going to create a warehouse right now so I can start running queries in it, right? And I'm going to call this, for example, compute warehouse. We like t-shirt sizes, so it could be a extra small, medium, large, and so on and so forth. What that changes is how many credits per hour you're going to be consuming. Now, it's important to realize that we only charge on a per second basis after the first minute. So first minute is charged, but then we're only charging on a per second basis. So if you're not using the system, if it's suspended, you're not being charged anything at the compute level anymore. And what you'll notice that we're doubling here the credits. That's literally because we're doubling the amount of compute and the amount of servers in that cluster. So an extra small is going to be 1 server, for example. A small is going to be 2 servers, and medium is going to be 4 servers. So you can increase the compute and scale up as you need, when you need it. And we're going to see an example of that while we're running some of the queries, that instant scalability. So if I wanted that extra performance level because I'm running a bigger query, we can easily and immediately scale up to that as per need. So I'm going to start with a small for now, for example. A couple of options that we can enable at this point. So query acceleration, this is great for certain outliers. Sometimes you have outlier queries that maybe need additional resources. So, maybe most of your queries are running and they take a normal amount of time, but then an anomaly comes in and you want to be able to cater to that. So we have query acceleration for that. Excuse me. We have the concept of a multi-cluster warehouse. So this is great for concurrency, for load balancing. If you're expecting a large bunch of queries to come in, so, sometimes it's not a question of extra compute. So the computing power here is related to, let's say, the query type and if it requires a lot of computing power. But not every problem is like that. I like to use the example of, if you're at the airport queue, you're at passport control, you have one person, he's stamping your passports, right? Simply replacing that person with a more muscular person or a bigger person isn't going to solve the problem of the queue, right? What you need to be able to do is add more passport control officers as needed. And then, when the queue drops, you need to be able to drop those officers, and so that you're not paying for more than you need. And that's literally what we're doing here. So we're setting up a minimum and maximum size for those clusters so that we can scale up and scale down, or basically add more load as necessary to deal with that query, let's say concurrency, if you will, more adaptively. A couple of more options to finalize before we get to the worksheet is auto resume and auto suspend. So these are great options. First up, auto suspend. So if I'm running queries all day long, or in the morning, I step out for breakfast or for lunch, I don't want that warehouse to continue running and consuming credits and basically paying. So you can set up the timeout periods, but in this case, after 10 minutes, it's going to suspend and you're not paying for anything. At the same time, we can auto resume. So as soon as a query comes in, I don't have to worry about starting up the warehouse. I don't have to worry about its state. As soon as a new query comes in, we're going to resume that warehouse and you basically continue operating as you go. So with that, I'm going to create this particular warehouse. Anything you want to add, Fredriek, before we get into the worksheets?
I'm pretty impressed with how creating a warehouse is fast. If the audience noticed, this gives us the ability to actually create and delete warehouses as we see fit. You don't have to go and worry about a purchase order, waiting for some hardware to come in, or waiting for the provisioning of a bunch of resources in half an hour to an hour. You need the warehouse again. As we like pitching at Snowflake, it just works. You create the warehouse right away. You're able to use it right away. You're done with it. You can delete it, and just leave it turned off. It doesn't cost anything when it's turned off. So that's something that it adds degree of efficiency and flexibility, which I think things that we love to show at Snowflake.
Yeah, thanks. And we're going to get more into that extra scalability and extra ease of use that comes with Snowflake. As you said, it just works. And this is really what I love about this platform. So here we are in a worksheet. I've got a bunch of scripts or queries to run to kind of highlight different things. So we're going to look at, again, I wasn't sure, I wasn't inside this event here, so I'm not sure what learned or heard Snowflake in terms of feature sets, but a couple of cool features that I'd like to showcase are time travel, zero copy cloning, and a bunch of other stuff. So we'll get into all that. So with that, here I have this worksheet, like I said. We've got our databases listed. Like you see, we have this CityBike1 database that I just created. There's no tables, there's nothing in it whatsoever. So first off, what we do is we set up the context. So I'm logged in right now as a sysadmin role over here, but you see, I don't have a virtual warehouse allocated to me. So I'm going to highlight, okay, I want to use this warehouse, and we can see now I'm allocated this particular computing cluster to work within. Remember, it was a small size, and then we don't have a database selected. So I'm going to highlight, okay, I want to use this particular database with this particular schema. So now I've set up the context of this workspace and what I'm going to be working around. First thing we're going to do, we're going to create a table with a bunch of stuff. So the reason I call this database CityBike is we're going to be looking at, if you're familiar with the bike rental type of companies, we're going to be looking at a data set that's related to the rental of these bikes, the duration of these trips, the beginning, start, and the beginning and the end of these trips, where they ended. So this is going to help drive the conversation. So with that, you see, I just created that trips table, and over here, lo and behold, we have all the information available to us in terms of what we created. So next thing, we're going to create a stage. So I want to start loading in information. So you might have your data sets hosted elsewhere. Wherever it is, we're able to import it. In this case, we're importing it into a stage called CityBike Trips. We're getting it from an S3 bucket. If there's credentials or secret keys, of course, we can cater to those. Let's have a look at what we just loaded. So in this case, it's just a bunch of files, right? You see over here, it's a bunch of compressed CSVs. We've got about 376 rows, so that's 375 or 376 rows of files to import. Next, I'm just going to create a format, a CSV format. We can ingest different types of files, whether it's comment limited, as in this case, whether it's JSON, Avro, Parquet. So we support structured, semi-structured, and unstructured data. Just to look at what we just created. So I just created a file format. So we understand what we're importing. Like I said, it's a CSV. We've defined what are the delimiters. Now we're going to start loading the data. In this case, it's already ASML. I'm not going to have to do this. We're going to copy in the data itself. Now, this is where the beauty of scalability and performance is going to come in. You'll notice that, yes, we're loading a bunch of files. It's about 370 files. It's going to take a fair amount of time. Because I'm using a small warehouse, that's a fairly limited amount of compute. We're going to repeat this exercise, but doing it with a large, and you're going to see how much and on the immediate, and you're going to see how much performance we get improved in this case. Remember, we're paying on a per second basis here, right? So if I'm able to do a query faster, even if it's costing a bit more because I'm using a larger computing cluster, if I'm able to do it faster, it actually ends up pretty much being the same cost, because I'm doing it in a much shorter amount of time. And that saves me, time to do more productive things, right?
And you know another thing, Omar?
So should
the audience doesn't know how many rows we loaded here. That's 60 million that we loaded in 34 seconds. So 60 million rows in 34 seconds. Mm-hmm. Come on. You want to show them what the large
That's amazing. Who will show to them? So what did we just import? Let's have a look. This is it. So we're limiting it at 10 for now, but yes, so this is the information that we just imported. As you can see, it's very well structured. This GUI is very nice to play around with. If I wanted to filter out, okay, just show me trip durations from a particular point to a particular point, easily filters out everything else. So I'm just looking at these particular rows. So filters galore, charts galore, everything. You can actually play around over here via the GUI if you want to set up filters or set up different types of things. Just to have a better idea, again, if we go back to the query history, remember we looked at, let's make sure it's refreshed. So this is what I just ran right now, right? For every query that we run, we actually create a query profile. And this is a very cool thing. It helps us understand, especially with a more complicated query, where most of the resources are being utilized for the generation of the results. And if something's taking a bit of a long time, we can understand from that, try to understand again where it's taking more time so that we can be more optimized and efficient about it. Here's a cool thing to also look at, and this is what we call pruning. So the total partitions for this selection would have been 80. But because we did a bit of a limitation, because we're doing active pruning on the side, we realized that from those 80 partitions, only 16 were necessary to find the results. So that's just to highlight, again, how we're able to improve upon performance of any traditional query that's given in. Fredriek, you want to add something more here?
No, concerning
about the coolness of the query profile.
Yeah, when it comes to the query plan that you find in the query profile, the more complicated the query, the more details that we're going to see, of course, because this was a simple select statement, so it's barely a table scan. You're going to notice that here in the table scan, actually in statistics, you'll see that we have 16 partitions scanned out of 80 partitions. That's one of the optimization techniques we have at Snowflake when it comes to storing the data. Of course, these are part of a deeper technical data we can go into, but that's something that I wanted to highlight. So from the query plan, you can go and get as many details about the query as you want.
Exactly. So now I'm going to repeat that query. So I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to truncate that table. And just to make sure that it's truncated, you see, we have nothing over here, right? Now I'm going to set that warehouse to a Excel large. I can do it from the GUI. I can go back to warehouses. We can do it from the GUI. But the cool thing is a lot of things that we can do is also can be done by script. So in this case, I'm just going to set it as an Excel large, right? Excuse me. Yeah. And then we're just going to have a look at the size. So it's just waiting for completion. It's just provisioning. The provisioning usually takes just a few seconds. And in this case, we see that computing warehouse is set to a extra large. Now we're going to copy the trips into there. And if you remember last time, it took what, more than 30 seconds, 34 seconds, was it?
Yep.
Okay. And in this case, it just took us about a third of the time, only 12 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And that's from an immediate scale up command. We didn't have to wait for anything. You don't, and the cool thing is here is that I'm right now it's just me working on this database, working on this particular table, right? Imagine concurrently other people working on that table at the same time, and we're not going to affect each other in terms of performance. Okay, if I'm running other queries, I don't have to stop any queries to be able to upsize this warehouse to be able to run at a higher computing power. So your existing queries, they keep going. There's no downtime. I don't have to bring down the database. I don't have to bring down the virtual warehouse. I don't have to do anything. It's immediate. I just change the size, run the new query. I take advantage of that extra computing power, and then maybe bring it back to the previous size so that I don't continue paying more for what I don't need. So this is a very cool thing, the fact that you're able to scale up immediately without having to stop any existing queries, without having to suffer from any downtime whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. And
I'm going to create sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Omar. And so basically what you can see here is you can easily create everything. You can easily go create a database. You can easily load your data. You see as well, Omar's going to run a query, and then we're going to show you a very cool feature called time travel. You can see how you can easily start querying your data, how you can create your compute clusters. That's something that's very useful in scenarios nowadays. We have a lot of customers who now don't want to wait for hardware. They don't want to wait for a purchase order to be signed. And they also don't want to wait for resources to be provisioned because these things tend to take time. Basically, with Snowflake, you sign, you get your account, You create your database, you load your data, you create your compute warehouses so you can run your queries, you create your worksheets, and you start writing your SQL scripts. And as you've seen, because we have the ability to determine data type, we were able to determine CSVs. You can easily load JSONs, Parquet files, and so on, structured, unstructured data. These will definitely require bigger sessions, of course, because there are lots of details there. But as you can see here, from a 20 to 30-minute session, we were able to create a lot of things from scratch. So, Omar, let's show them how a few queries look like, so that we can see the familiarity between the querying part and then something that will make administrators breathe.
Will do. So earlier I showed how we can create a warehouse from the GUI just as easily. I can create a warehouse via the okay, hang on. Easily, I can just create a warehouse via the script. In this case, I created a large one. Okay, the min was below the max. That's why. Look the other way around. Hang on. I'm going to do it that way. So just like that, I created a multi-clustered warehouse. So now, if you look over here, I can see that now I'm using this particular new warehouse. So again, it's just to show that how you can go around and use different warehouses if you have them set up for different purposes. Okay. Again, we're going to look at all those trip data, and we'll have more fun some of the chart data, and then we'll look at some hourly statistics. It's just provisioning, it's just taking a few seconds. Maybe I shouldn't have clustered it.
Well, by the time this runs, you can run the other query using another warehouse.
Yeah, let's just switch it away. Okay. So here we're looking at hourly statistics on city bike usage, right? So we're looking at date, number of trips, the average duration. Again, we can easily filter out as needed. We can play around with the GUI and all of that. This particular query, if you notice, took one second, right? So because we just ran this query, it's actually stored now. The result of this query is stored in our metadata cache. If we run the same query within the next 24 hours and if the data set hasn't changed, we actually use that cache again. So it's going to run a lot faster. If you see, notice now, last time it took 1 second, this time it took 38 milliseconds. Now, 1 second, 38 milliseconds is amazing, but imagine again on a much bigger query, something that would take minutes on end or hours. In this case, imagine how much saving you to have if somebody else, another DBA, another data analyst is able wanting to run the same data set, the same query, and the data set hasn't changed. You're getting the result immediate without wasting precious time.
And this is actually a
scenario I want to find out
with BI, with the reports, when you have thousands of users accessing reports, you run the first query once, and then the reports, when they rerun again, they just make use of the cache. So that definitely saves a lot of time.
Let's say I want to find out when the busiest month is. We find out, okay, I'm just doing an ascending trip. It's a very easy select. It's June. But maybe later on, we'll see, I want to correlate this with weather to see if this is weather related. So again, I'm just showing up more queries over here. What if we wanted to create a temporary clone of production? A lot of times with that, when you want to set up a testing environment or a temporary development environment, usually it's a subset of production because of just how much cost and management it takes, right? In this case, I can clone the whole of production as a clone, as you can see over here, without taking any additional space. So basically what you end up with is, so the development team can end up with, is a clone copy of the data. It's a zero copy clone, okay? And then any manipulations, any modifications of the data are happening independently of production. And anything that's happening in production won't affect this temporary data, okay? So just as easily, I can play around now with this particular development environment. We're going to look at a quick example of semi-structured data. So I'm going to create a database called weather. We're already using this. I'm going to change my database and schema to weather in public. And we're going to create a table with a variant column name or column type, data type, which is basically how we're going to be storing the semi-structured data. So we're creating another stage. This time it's called New York City weather. Let's have a quick look at it to see what's inside of it. In this case, another 36 rows of weather data. We're going to copy it in. Okay, that took only 2 seconds. Let's have a look at it. As you can see, this is just what you expect to see in a JSON file or JSON file, and it's fairly also semi-structured. If I click on it, you can see we can start understanding from the variant column type what that data looks like, right? Now I can create a view based on that, and just like that, if I look at that new view that I just created, this is my semi-structured data. Look at how fast that was. So semi-structured data didn't have to worry about transformation or anything of the sort. We can immediately have a view of that semi-structured data in a nice, easy way. Alongside my structured data, we can do joins and all of that. Fredriek, more about that?
Actually, I'm excited to see this next query because you're going to be joining structured and unstructured.
Yes. So remember my trips data before that we just created? That was structured data from CSV. And the weather data we just imported right now is JSON. So I'm just going to select those and join them together. And just like that, I have done a certain particular correlation. And remember, we said that the largest number of trips were happening in June. But now I have a better correlation. Now I understand that the majority of my trips are happening when the weather condition is clear, which makes sense. When it's good weather, we all want to be out there biking. Now, how often has this happened? I drop a table, I drop a column, or I modify a certain data set, and then I need to go back to backup and recovery to try and recover it. So I just dropped it. Oops, I've lost my weather data. Let's have a look at it. Yeah, it's gone. Very easily. I don't have to go to the DBA. I don't have to go back to my tapes. I don't have to do any kind of backup and recovery and wait for days on end or get any approvals. I can just undrop it, and right there and there, I have access to my data back. Think about how much time and effort this is saving. The fact that you can basically undrop a table or revert back to a certain point in time due to time travel. I'm going to show you another example of time travel. Yes, please.
Oh, yeah. Just an additional point there. We were just talking, remember, Omar, with a colleague of ours who was just telling us that he spent 17 days on trying to recover data from a backup.
Yes.
Yeah, anyways, so it was horrible. Anyway, so the last thing we're going to be showing you today is this last bit in time travel. So you can see that it's not just about dropping tables and databases. We take it a step further as well.
Yeah, a cool feature with time travel is exactly, it's not just recovery, but we can recover, let's say, back to a certain point in time. But you can also do historical analysis. So if I wanted to compare my data today to what it looked like a week or two ago, that's all possible. So historical analysis is also made more possible by time travel. But yeah, back to this point in terms of just, let's say, messing up the database, right? So let's say I update my trips table, but I set everything in terms of station name to oops. Okay, so clearly a mistake. And if I look at now my table, I see that okay, there's no more station names. It's just one station name called oops with all the rides in it. And those are the 61 million rides that we had discussed earlier. So there's a number of ways to basically revert. You can revert back to a point in time. You can do it before a certain point in time or before a certain command was run. So in this case, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to set my query ID, which we saw from the query history earlier. You can also find that out there. But in this case, I'm looking up the query ID to find out when the last update happened. Okay, so that's been set. And now all I'm going to do is I'm going to create that table again just before that update of oops happened, right? So that's just happened. And as you can see right now, we'll run that same query and yay, I have my data back. Again, imagine without this time travel feature having to revert back to traditional ways of doing backup and recovery, how much time you'd lose and how much data you might lose in the process. I think that's about it. So one last thing I'd like to show is a marketplace feature. So if I go to the marketplace, And just to show you how easy it is to subscribe to new data sets, you can play around with this. Some require subscription, some are free. So maybe I wanted to look at COVID data. I like this from Star Schema. It's free. So actually, no, whatever. Yeah, okay, fine. Yes. So in this case, I'm getting it for free. It's ready to query. There's no storage cost to me. I'm going to call it Zero to Snowflake Shared Data. You can choose which roles are going to have access to that. In this case, let's keep it public. There we go. Oh, yes, of course. You need to be account admin. Actually, I want to do two things. I want to show you how to share and how to get a share. So in this case, we're getting the shared data. And just like that, I have access to this COVID data that I can play around with. Not just that, they also give you some pre-queries that you can run to play around with. So in this case, if I find a warehouse, we run this, and just like that, I'm running queries to find out, for example, the number of cases per country. And this is real time. That's the cool thing about data sharing at the bottom marketplace, is that when you're subscribing to a data view, essentially you're getting a real-time view, always up to date. You don't have to worry about the data becoming stale or anything like that. And look at just how immediate all of this is. If I wanted to share my data itself, so we go to private sharing. This is the last thing we're showing. Let's say create a Polish specified consumers. No, not this one. Sorry, 1 sec. Publish to marketplace. Nah, it's the last one. Sorry, this has changed a little bit. There we go. So I'm going to select the data. I'm going to go to my CD bike. I'm just going to share my trips folder. And just like that, I'm going to give it a certain, I can select which accounts in which region are going to have access to this. And easy as that, you can have it available to others.
Actually,
and that's it in a nutshell.
You managed to fit an entire demo in 2 minutes. So that's excellent. Yeah, the data collaboration.
That's my talent. And then I'm done with it. I'm going to drop everything and we're done.
So to summarize, you're most welcome.
Yes.
You're most welcome. It was a pleasure being with you today. All right. Have an excellent day, everyone.
Thank you, guys.